David, welcome and thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
I guess the first question is, what do you consider the 5 tenets of good corporate governance?
I think the first thing for a chairman is that we obviously have to work out a structure for how the company or the institution, the super fund or whatever, will be governed. And sometimes it's there and sometimes it isn't. The second thing is, once we have a structure, we have to put the people into place, and this includes designating who's going to be the CEO, the managing director, and working out our relationship as chair with that person. And often that's sometimes quite vexed. The third thing we have to do, is having established that, is to both nurture it, and the fourth thing is police it. And sometimes as chairs, I've often found it quite difficult to run that role of nurturing and in fact being the policeman all at the same time. And I think my final tenet would be that we as chairs have to keep our egos in check, which, you know, quite often is hard, and make sure that it's the organisation that's more important than our own ideas and our own standing. And often there is a complex relationship between who we are, what we're doing in one spot, and who we are and what we're doing in another.
David, how is it different being a chair of the board of a public company, a charity, a superannuation fund, or a private company, or in fact are the principles the same?
I think firstly, from where I look at it, is I look at them as all the same. I think the principles of governance are basically the same. But each one of those different varieties have different stakeholders. And I think you have to be very sensitive to them. To give you an example, I chair a listed public company, CocaCola Amatil, at the moment. And there I have both a major shareholder and also a lot of other shareholders who deal in my stocks regularly and sometimes for very short periods. At the same time, I'm chairman of, say, the Sydney Theatre Company, where my stakeholders include all the people, in my opinion, of Australia. We are in a company that is now internationally acclaimed, and we owe a lot to them because it's the people of Australia who give us some of our funding through our federal government grants. In my view, the governance should be the same, but one's sensitivity to the different stakeholders often has to be slightly different. Those who've put their money in, for example as shareholders, may be in a slightly different position as those who have a view as to what you should perform at a particular time. But they all have to be dealt with dignity and suitable listening to, but at the same time one has to actually manage and operate in a proper way.
So David, from this side is still that your main role as chair is to understand the organisation in its full breadth and depth, to understand what the key issues are, to be able to then designate to executive and committees and subcommittees the key issues to research and come back with recommendations for the board then to very efficiently and quickly make the key stakeholder decisions.
I see us as having 3 major roles. The first, in which what you've just said fits. We are a corral of information. We are given the role to organise and be the conductor of a board that has to make decisions. And that means we have to give enough information to the board to make the decision. We've got to cultivate the discussion, not dominated by just 1 or 2. Everybody has to have their say. And we've got to focus on a decision that is both relevant and timeous for the organisation. The second part of what we have to do, in my opinion, is to choose the right people, as I said earlier. Who's the CEO, and that may be the biggest decision we make, and indeed who's on the board and assist in putting that slate of people together through the procedures, be they votes or whatever, to get it through. And the third one is the nurturing one. And I think sometimes we as chairs forget this. We are there to police, definitely, but we're also there to make the organisation do better. So our CEO has to be helped to fly. And if, by the way, if they fly irresponsibly or in the wrong direction, we must cut them down. But on the other hand, we're there to help them take off and land very smoothly.
How much detail should a chair be involved in? How much is in fact appropriate? How much should you know about each organisation?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting question. I think you do need to be involved, but you have to pull yourself back. In my experience, and I was working it out the other day, I got my first public company directorship at the age of 27. And that wasn't yesterday, unfortunately. I've seen all sorts of styles of chairs. I've seen the interfering chairman and I've seen the totally absent chairman. Both, in my opinion, are wrong. I think you've got to build on the concept of knowing what's happening so that people don't feel that you're just a fly-by-night and you come in for the lunches and off you go. But at the same time, you've got to give people some rope. Because if you don't allow them to do something, they'll be dependent just on you. And if you do everything, you actually have an organisation that's not a proper organisation. So my feeling is that yes, I'm very interested in what's going on. I love the diversity of what I do, and I do remember the numbers that are given to me. But make no mistake, I expect the people who work with me and under me, and I might say alongside of me, to contribute. And when they do, they deserve all the accolades. It's not just my business.
David Gonski, thank you very much for the generosity of your time and information.
Thanks, Colin.